our 41st Acre, unfiltered, a little biased, 100% truthful. Looking back at the end of an era, Quinn Ewers era, 3 seasons, 8-5, 12-2, 13-3, back-to-back playoff semifinal berths. Unfortunate outcomes to Washington and Ohio State. But first back-to-back 10-win season since 08-09. Colt McCoy's final 2 years. So, the talk around the town is Texas is back, and you know, we'll see what happens. We're gonna look forward to next year in a future podcast. But end of an era with Quinn. Getting Texas back to this stage. Like when it's been a while since we've talked about Texas competing for national championships. They had opportunities the last 2 seasons to get to that game, and felt like they left a lot on the field both times. But just to be in this position, Quinn, is part of that bringing Texas back. Just to have that ability. So, into the Quinn era, Brett. We were trying to watch his video, his departure video. Brett, you write a thank you letter to Quinn, mail it.
Only in my head. Only in my head. Yeah, it's just to see this team graduate and move on to the NFL, or the guys that are, and not being able to see it. I thought Michael Taff did an excellent job. Putting the words together to describe like how much this team meant to him. So seeing all these guys, obviously Quinn included, Quinn at the helm of, taking this team from, our struggling Charlie Strong and Tom Herman eras to the first couple years under Sarkisian, which were a little bit slow, to, ultimately a top 4 team in his final 2 years at Texas, becoming a legend, even with all the scrutiny, with all the backlash from certain fans, from media heads across the country, guys that were constantly chirping about Arch needing to be the starter. He took us from that low spot and brought us back into success, and that's how I always remember Quinn. Quinn was the guy that was steering the ship when we from the point where we were in some of our dog years of Texas, that decade and a half of just pain, to the upper echelons of the sport again. Ultimately didn't get to the final destination, which I think is where we hope and probably think we can get in the next few years under this roster, but certainly got us going in the right direction. So yeah, for sure. Sad to see Quinn go. Watch this highlight video. Hard for me to keep the tears from welling up in my eyes. But yeah, he definitely meant a lot to me, meant a lot to the program, and probably meant a lot to a lot of fans out there.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Think about where we were, even 5 years ago, right? Yeah, sure, we still had Tom Herman as a head coach. And before that, we had the years of Charlie Strong, and it just seemed like this never-ending quarterback hell. A lot of potential around. Still a lot of high-ranked recruits coming in, but they'd come in as a 5-star, 4-star. They'd leave as a 3-star. Had a lot of years of just undrafted or late drafted. Players. It was just horrendous to be there. When we hired Sark, losing Quinn in his, I guess, senior year of high school to go to OU hurt for sure, but I think that he did it for NIL. I don't think that there's any secret in that, as he's come out and said it. So when Sark came over and he was able to lure Quinn back, it kind of started to give you that glimpse of hope, right? Which hopium is bad in the Texas Longhorn realm. We have a lot of it as Texas fans, alumni, casual watchers just see Texas fans and they're like, yep, you just got a lot of hope, but you're not really, able to follow through with anything.
It's like in the Avengers Endgame when they're looking for the guy with the bow and arrow. And he's he stares at Scarlett Johansson and he's like, don't give me hope.
Yeah.
It was like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Texas fans just constantly jump off the cliff.
Yeah.
And, Sark came in, and I'll be the first to say that I was a little hesitant about Sark, but to watch the way that he was able to recruit, obviously his first year we had, who are the 2 quarterbacks we just talked about? Hudson Card and Casey Thompson. Thank you, Brett. And you're like, okay, you can see that the offense looks pretty, but we need that captain, right? We need that conductor to steer this train in the right direction. And goes out and gets Quinn, which was just one of the coolest like comeback home stories out there. Obviously, he was committed to the Longhorns for a long time. Texas kid, born and raised, wanted to be here. Came back, 8-5 his first year, 12-2 and 13-3 his last 2 years. Like, I guess all those wins and losses don't go for him or against him because he was injured, which is one thing that I'm like is probably going to stick out in my head. Like the Quinn era was great because it brought us from, I mean, just the depths of just WTF, man. Like, how can we not put together a winning team? To, oh God, they're so close. Like, just make a play here or there. And that's what high level football is a play here or there throughout, a 60-minute game that can decide whether you win or lose. Like, sure, you can go out and route somebody, which is great, but that's usually just you just overmatch or you just absolutely outmatch them, right? But there was never a game where Quinn was playing in those last 2 years, especially even in the first year where we were 8-5, that you didn't think we had a chance to win. And Quinn gave us that hopium again, and I, for one, love it. Like, I'm not one to say Texas is back yet. I think we need one more season similar to what we just saw over the past two to see that, like, okay, we went through multiple graduating classes, multiple quarterbacks to say, like, this is where Texas was when we were growing up, when we had Colt and Vince, right? Like, we had, and I guess even before then, we had Major Applewhite and Chris Sims. Like, to go through multiple quarterbacks, multiple years, multiple conferences, right? And be in the conference championship, be in the national championship conversation at the end of the year. Not at the beginning where we're just making up a bunch of numbers and saying these are the rankings we think are out there. So Quinn has shown us this far, right? This is the early 2000s team of like, look, guys, you have all the resources and the players and the coach in the right spot to make this happen. So now's your time to go out and get it. Okay. We went from Ricky into the Major Applewhite and Chris Sims year. Then we go into Vince Young and Colt McCoy. Maybe we're at the beginning of the 2000s again, and we're just trying to repeat that. So I'm very grateful for Quinn as a Texas fan, as a Texas alumni, as someone who just likes talking good ball. So where we were back then and where we are now is just light years ahead. I love that Quinn came to Texas and put us where we are, put us back on the map. Not fully back yet, but very, very close. I think one more year, like I said, and we'll be there. Got some great memories of them, which I know we're going to get into. But, man, to not just Quinn, there were obviously a lot of other seniors and juniors are leaving, but just this team meant a lot the past 2 years to, I think, a fan base that was just hoping and praying for somebody to put him in the national conversation again. So happy to say I was a part of it for sure.
I thought I remember Quinn's recruitment out of high school too. And I remember when he committed to Texas, and it was one of those commitments that we weren't really expecting at the time. It was kind of out of the blue. It was Tom Herman team at the time. He always wanted to play for Texas, but he wasn't like crystal balled or anything to Texas. All of a sudden he commits. He's the number one recruit in the nation, obviously, but also one of the few recruits that's ever had a perfect score in the recruiting rankings. I think 24/7 gave him like 1,000 or out of 100, 100 out of 100. But he was one of the perfect recruits. And as soon as he committed to Texas, I think it was Evan Stewart, former A&M wide receiver, who also committed right behind him. And it was like, oh my gosh, like we're actually going to get not just a good quarterback, but the quarterback in this recruiting class. And then that all those great feelings were completely deflated when he ultimately committed and ended up enrolling early at Ohio State. But I do remember then, he hits the transfer portal after Sarkisian's in his first year. And he hits the transfer portal, and the top teams that he's looking at are A&M, Tech, and Texas. He was coming back to the state of Texas to play. You've got all the drama around, like somebody's drug dealer's best friend heard that Quinn's going to go to Texas Tech and become the starter there and all this. And so there's a little bit of drama there. But ultimately, he wrote pinned his letter, Dear Texas. It sat as the cover of his Instagram for the past 3 years, talking about how he always dreamed about playing at the University of Texas and being that captain. So watching all that drama unfold, for him to actually come in and then immediately play against the number one team in the nation in Alabama at home, I think week 2 of his first year in his first year starting at Texas, and actually, carving up Alabama's defense for a full quarter before I can't remember who it was, but before that Alabama defensive back or linebacker drove him to the ground and broke his collarbone.
Dallas Turner.
Yeah.
I think that was his second year starting, right? First year was the 8-5 year.
No, that was that year was the 8-5 year.
Okay.
Yeah, because we lost Alabama. His second year, we beat Alabama. Third year, we didn't play Alabama.
Right. I guess. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I was at that game when Quinn got injured too. That was.
Oh.
Had I known that was going to be something that gets repeated year after year, we have to go through 3 or 4 weeks without Quinn.
Yeah. Last year was nice. Like when we don't get our starting quarterback hurt, I think we're 1-0 against Alabama.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
But when our starting quarterback gets hurt, at least in the last decade, we're 0-2.
All right. Right.
Brutal.
It's kind of fitting, like how like we talk about the end of this era, like first back-to-back win since the Colt era. Who did we lose to at the end of the Colt era? Alabama. He got hurt in the national championship game. That was our last back-to-back 10-win seasons, and then we all know what happened after that with Garrett Gilbert.
That's when the whole quarterback cycle at Texas started.
Yeah.
Can you name all the starters that we had between Garrett Gilbert and Quinn?
David Ash, Tyrone Swoops, Sam Ellinger, Shane Buechele.
Yeah.
And then the two that we just named most recently.
Case McCoy.
Case McCoy. Yeah.
You said Tyrone Swoops.
Mm-hmm. And then the two we named earlier.
Remember I told you guys one time I got an Uber ride from Tyrone's dad?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty
Should have been driving an 18-wheeler.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't remember where it was.
That would have been fitting. All right, before we move on from Quinn, though, what was y'all's favorite moment in the Quinn era?
Mine was beating A&M after this, break from. They went to the SEC. We stayed in the Big 12, and now we came back, and some things never change. Thanks, Quinn, for reminding us of that and putting little brother back in their place. I want to get a T-shirt. Right. I want to get a T-shirt made that basically says, however many years it was, some things never change. So we have a score from the last time we beat him with Case McCoy in the Big 12, and then we have a score from we're back in the same conference again. Whatever. 12 years break, and still the same.
I love it. You gotta have Case McCoy running crazy through Kyle Field with his hands up.
It's more Justin Tucker,
Oh, okay. See, I feel you there. I like Case's story there, but I know obviously JT hit the kick. Unfortunately, one thing that I'm going to remember about Quinn is what could have been. It was a shame to never see him fully healthy for any of the seasons he was here. I think the last time he was fully healthy, he was a sophomore in high school. So that is the what could have been in my mind. But a lot of really positive memories as well. As Ben said, beating A&M, a winning record versus OU, and just dismantling that team in all three of his games. Granted, we lost the game in the middle, but all three of his games, Quinn played out of his mind. So he knew how to get up for that game. I mean, obviously he's a Dallas area kid. So to watch him just go and definitely put the fear of God in some of those OU fans is nice. 4th and 13. That we talked about it when it happened against Arizona State. That was one of the coolest plays. And just you remember the way you feel before the play. Obviously, before that play, the false start that put us in that situation again. And then while the ball was in the air, and then after he caught it, you remember all three. You remember it's like that, I don't know, 10 seconds was 2.5 minutes. Like it's like it was a song within itself. And it was just a wonderful play and sent Texas, to their next, round of the playoffs. But I would say that throw, and I know it's kind of recency bias there, but that and some of those moon balls that he would throw to like the one that X-Worthy at Alabama,
Yeah.
like some of those throws
That
were
was cool.
just amazing. So yeah, the arm talent for sure is one thing to
Arm
miss.
talent. Yeah. Um, yeah, that whole sequence at the end of the Arizona State game, like literally 10 seconds of game, in a 10-second segment of the game, you had the 4th and 13 completion, you had the touchdown to Gunnar Helm, and the 2-point conversion by Matthew Golden.
Hmm.
All three of them just like, I mean, put an exclamation point at the end of Quinn's career, and then he played an outstanding game against Ohio State too. Um, Probably my favorite games or the most memorable games for me for Quinn was Justin. You and I went to that OU game where he played his first OU game, and he just absolutely carved OU up
49-0.
in that game in his first year. Yeah, that was awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, OU was kind of on the start of this teetering uh, level of success that they've had recently, but yeah, for him to go in there, first Red River game, expectations are super high for him to just go in there and just carve them up. I think he had one bad interception where he threw like a duck,
Yeah.
and it got picked off. But other than that, he was just like perfect in it. The Alabama game in Tuscaloosa, where yeah, you mentioned the touchdown pass to Worthy, and then the one that sealed it though was to Adonai Mitchell, also
Hmm.
in the end zone. He made, and then I think he hit Jatavion Sanders for like 100 yards in that game too. Those are so awesome. But the thing I'll remember, I'll want to remember about Quinn the most is just how he never let the emotions get too big for him, and he was always very composed, and he always kept us in the game. He always gave us an opportunity to win, even in this Ohio State game. Like he's the one that was sitting there carving it up, getting us down the field, and we weren't able to punch it in. Not on him, but he got us there. He got us in there. He single-handedly brought us back in that Arizona State game to allow us to advance to the Ohio State semifinal. So, he was never out of it. He was never mentally out of it. He even played well against Georgia in that second half when we're down big, to bring us back. I mean, obviously we had some issues on offensive line, but he was always mentally tough and he wanted to win. He was a big team guy. He wasn't necessarily that. And I'll mention one other thing. It's kind of cool. I thought it was. I think it's something that's underreported, but I thought it was awesome how Quinn and I think Jade was the guy on defense. They led kind of a spiritual Bible study on a weekly basis, and those guys were able to convert majority of the team to come to those. And it was about team, but it was also about spirituality and relationship with God, which I thought was super cool. I wish they kind of highlighted that a little bit more, but just to have that maturity to want to do that, think about beyond football and stuff like that, and really build that team camaraderie through that. I thought that was always such a cool story to kind of hear of what was going on in the background.
Yeah, definitely good leaders. And now, Justin, I don't know if you had something else you want to say on Quinn, but we can kind of get into just
Okay.
guys that are leaving overall, and maybe first off, kind of guys we want to give a key shout out and thank you to. Um, Jade Barron comes to mind. Thank you for bringing the Thorpe Award back to Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
It's been we
Amen.
talk about this era. When we go back to the Vince Young, Colt McCoy era, like how many Thorpe Award winners do we have? Just the Mac Brown era in general. Aaron Ross, Michael Huff. Um, there was one other one, right? Or was it just those two guys?
Could have been one of the Griffins, maybe.
Yeah, either way, but Texas used to be DBU, and they definitely weren't for a good time, and last year horrible DBs. Washington made note of that, but this year DBU was back, so thanks to Barron for leading that secondary, and glad we're getting Taft back, and hope a healthy Derek Williams next year. Um, Malik Manny Muhammad coming back, so we got some good guys coming back. But thanks to Barron for leading that. And then my other one is, and 2 years in a row, I think we've had a good transfer wide receiver come in and lead the wide receiver group. So the year before was Adonai Mitchell. This year it was Matthew Golden just coming in and kind of being a leader there, and he wasn't super like a rah leader. Like he led by example. Like I'm catching the football, I'm running good routes. At least you didn't see that from him. Not a heavy celebration guy. Just catching balls, running good routes. Like he was Mr. Reliable from the wide receiver position all year long. So that's that. Hopefully that's a good theme. We're going to get into a future podcast, but we need another transfer wide receiver to come in and step up next season and improve his draft stock by coming to the University of Texas. So
catching balls from Arch Manning.
Catching balls from Arch. Who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. On the Matthew Golden thing, I would highlight too. I think he was like an ultimate team guy as well. Like Ben, to your point, I don't have a lot. I don't have a big presence on social media or stuff, but I heard that like he was just always every other player's like biggest cheerleader. Like Michael Taft put out the video saying he was going to come back, and Matthew Golden was one of the first people to respond to it, and it was like, thanks for being the leader that you are on this team. So fired up for you to have one more year. He's like, thank you for everything you do. He was always, about 100% about the team, not necessarily about me. And I think that was such a good cultural move for this team to start having guys like that. And you saw a lot of that buy-in from a lot of different guys, not just Matthew Golden, but he was certainly one of those good examples of that.
Yeah, no, Golden was awesome, man. I remember watching him at U of H and just thinking, dude, how did this kid end up at U of H? Like, it's not like it was with Dana White or maybe the coach before. No, I think it was Dana White. But it's just one of those, you're looking at that like, you're too good.
Not Dana White, the UFC
Holgerson.
owner.
Dana White Holgerson, sorry. Dana Holgerson, yeah. But just thinking, man, how did you end up at U of H? You're too good. So to see him be able to transfer to a school like UT and play the way he did and just ball out. And I mean, I think he firmly put himself in the top 10 wide receivers coming out this year, probably hovering between 5 and 7, if I had to guess. Just he's going to be a good culture guy. He's a good route guy. He's got great hands, good body control. Like, man, thank you for him. He definitely was getting a lot of praise in the spring and preseason, but like to see him really shine at the end of the second half of the season when Bond went out and all that. I mean, like what a neat chemistry him and Quinn had. So thank you to Quinn. Thank you to Matthew Golden. I mean, especially on the offensive side, Cam Williams and Kelvin Banks. I mean, as many penalties as Cam Williams had, I think Kelvin Banks probably made up for it for not having a lot of penalties. So we'll kind of throw them together, even them out. But those guys were anchors for 3 years on that offensive line. And at least I know Kelvin Banks played all 3 years. I feel like Cam Williams played a lot of 3 seasons. So to see them two as just like anchors on the tackles, I mean, not that we had the best offensive line in some situations, but it really helps to let your quarterback be able to actually throw the ball, give them time, and have a good run game. So thank you to those two guys for just being you and just going out. You're going to be first-round draft picks. I know we can, go back and forth on what we think about Cam, if he should come back or not, but he's going to the NFL and he's going to be a great player there too. Moving over to defense, I'll throw these out there real quick. Obviously, Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba. Jahdae, like you said, bringing back the Thorpe Award. That's what he came back for. That's why he took number 7. I mean, hell of a job to call your shot and get it. That's one of the coolest things that I think you could do as a player is to call your shot and then go out and get exactly what you were going for. He's a heady player. He studies a lot. He's also extremely talented and physically gifted. So
Headley.
That's
yeah. One of those plays I remember from him and Makuba. I mean, some of their interceptions this year were unbelievable. But Jahdae, when he actually peeled off of his route, it was early in the season. He peeled off of his guy and actually went over to a different receiver and intercepted that ball, kind of on a seam route. That's study. That's what he does. And I hope that we have more players like that saw what he did and understand, okay, I can be that guy if I do all these steps, right? Because we have a lot of physically gifted players, but you got to be 50% mental here too. So thanks to him. And then last one I'll say is freaking Alfred Collins. Like, dude, Alfred Collins had his ups and downs at UT for sure. And moments where we thought he was transferring, moments where we thought he was going to be leaving early because he was just so good in one splash play or two splash plays. To come in and do what he did his senior year and absolutely put himself at the top of the defensive tackle conversation. I mean, like that is just true grit and like just the grinded out mentality that he had of, no, I can be better. I can be better. And he saw those other defensive tackles come in and move in front of him and come in and move in front of him. I think he finally got everything to where his motor's there. It's all the time. And he just cares a lot about the product that he puts on the field. And you could definitely see it. So, man, those guys were unbelievable leaders. We didn't even talk about Barron Sorrell and some of these other guys who have been here for 4 or 5 years. But this is a special class, special team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one other thing on that on Matthew Golden. I mean, he's on the other side of that Quinn legacy throw, right? The 4th and 13. That doesn't get any other wide receiver. I mean, the route that he ran was so perfect, just to break open wide like he did, and still make the catch as he's going down. Yeah, like you said, Justin, he's got unbelievable hands. Shout out to my buddy Francisco, big U of H fan. He told me when Matthew Golden transferred to Texas, he said, "Thank goodness, because we didn't deserve him here at U of H. He was underutilized, and I just hope that he gets maximum opportunity to play." And he did. He did. He got that opportunity. It came later in the year. He became the Quinn's go-to target in the red zone, led our team in receiving touchdowns, and probably receiving yards, I guess. I don't actually know that stat, I would assume. But, yeah, he was awesome. He was awesome. I'm so glad that he had that breakout year to really lift his draft stock, too. Jahdae Barron. Jahdae Barron was one of those guys that was, flirting with the transfer portal a couple years ago. Y'all remember that? Him and Xavier Worthy were thinking about going to, I think they said that Oregon was probably the suitor that was after them. But how glad are you guys that neither one of those happened? We were able to keep those guys.
Jeez. No kidding.
Just trusting Sark and his team to make sure that they're dispersing the right NIL deals and getting the right guys on the field at the time to maintain that roster. There's a lot of trust there, a lot of good things that they're doing to manage that overall roster. But yeah, I mean, he had the interception against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, intercepted Jalen Milroe at one point in time, and they asked him about it, and he's like, "Yeah, I just saw stuff on film. I saw a couple of these plays on film, and kind of saw some of these tendencies that Milroe had on certain routes, and saw an opportunity to game and jumped the route." I loved when Jahdae first kind of broke out in that nickel roll, where he would bust every single wide receiver screen. Y'all remember that?
Yeah,
It was
he had 11 tackles for loss that year.
Yeah, I remember that TCU game when TCU came. What year was that? That was probably 2 years ago, right? When TCU made the national championship. 2 years ago?
Yeah, would have been
2 years ago?
CJ Stroud's last year.
Yeah. Made the national championship, and but I remember when TCU came to Austin, and he was just busting. Anytime that they would try to do that, he just had it memorized. Like, hey, this formation, that wide receiver steps back, and he'd get past that block and just blow it up every single time. And that's kind of when he made a name for himself and just became this student of the game and just absolute stud. And for him to move from nickel to corner and be the shutdown corner in all of college football was awesome. I mean, plus a bunch of help from safeties and other guys across the field. But, I mean, they kept Jeremiah Smith to one catch for 3 yards. So keep that in mind. Who else? Yeah, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, those guys, remember them coming in that recruiting class. Alfred Collins had the splash play against Colorado in the Alamo Bowl, Justin, like you had mentioned earlier. Everyone thought the world of him as a recruit. Vernon Broughton was thought of more of like a developmental project. Those guys were just studs. We're at the end of an era of this pipeline of recurring defensive tackle talent right now, which I'm a little bit concerned in going to 2025. You had Keandre Coburn and Moro Ojimo in that first year. And then last year, obviously, you had Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, probably the best two defensive tackles we've had at Texas ever, as far as a combination of two guys go. And Now you have Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. All 6 of those guys are draft picks, or going to be draft picks. You probably don't have that same next year, which is unfortunate, but yeah, what a fun rotation we've had at the defensive tackle position over the past 3 years, right?
Oh,
So,
amen.
Big shout out to those guys.
Yeah, stuff in the middle run. I mean, that's what has been the backbone of the defense for the past 3 years, easily.
Yeah.
Right. Also, totally. I mean, how could we forget Gunnar Helm? Dude,
don't forget
Gunnar Helm. So you were right. Yeah, Matthew Golden led in yards and touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Gunnar Helm led in receptions. He had him by 2, 60 receptions. Golden had 58. I mean, for a tight end to come in and work for 3 years in the Sarkisian offense and not really do anything, and then his 4th year just absolutely explode. We knew he was a developmental project when he came in, but for them to feel comfortable enough to say, yeah, sure, we'll bring in Amari Nyblack, who's supposed to be this all-world athlete, just fast as hell, make him a receiving tight end. I think the dude had less than 10 catches, maybe had 4 or 5 catches all season. Gunnar Helm absolutely put all other tight ends in their spot. He blocks pretty well, but him as a safety blanket coming in at whatever, 6'5", 250, however big he is, like the dude just came in and took, 6'5", 250, just took that position like by the haunches and just said, I'm sorry. No, he basically just said, guys, I've got this. I've got your back. I know this is the second most important position in the Sark offense. And he just didn't let it go. And I mean, what a cool story to see him come from just a skinny little freshman kid to what he is now, and certainly going to be drafted and playing on Sundays. I mean, he's not the Mackey Award winner, but he was the best tight end that I've seen at Texas in all around in a long time. Better than JT. I mean, he's been there. He's been the guy this year, and it came out of nowhere. But man, way to leave that room.
Yeah. He another pipeline for us, tight end position. I mean, go from JT Sanders to Gunnar Helm. Two draft picks in a row. Who's going to be the next guy? I think we have some depth there too. But yeah, Gunnar kind of came on the scene. I think it was last year, where we were running a lot of 12 personnel, and JT Sanders used him as kind of a decoy in the OU game. And I think Gunnar Helm caught his first touchdown pass in that game.
Yeah.
Or maybe a big reception at some point in time. I was like, Gunnar Helm? I was like, who's this guy? Going from very little expectation this year to being, to the guy, under stress to throw to. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk, so real quick, I guess guys that are leaving that are out of eligibility: Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, Gunnar Helm, Juan Davis. Other departures, guys entering the draft: we got Quinn, we got Matt Golden, Isaiah Bond, questionable decision. Banks, Williams, Jaden Blue, another one Brett's a little fired up about. But my thought on Jaden Blue is he's going to be 3rd or 4th on the depth chart next year, maybe just a 3rd down back. He finished with a good game. His draft stock might be highest now, and he's probably not worth the NIL money. He wants. I think Justin mentioned that. Any of those guys you want to talk about that we hadn't touched on already?
You
want to add to the list? I know there's some more players that we didn't mention the full list.
Yeah, I mean, just on the offense side, the Jaden Blue, it's a big loss for the running back because we don't know what the running back depth chart's going to look like next year. We've got 2 guys coming back from very serious injuries. just to count CJ Baxter and what's the freshman's name? Christian Clark. Yeah. To count those guys in as fully healthy going into fall camp, you can't guarantee that. We don't know what they're going to look like. Some guys bounce back from injuries better than others. Depth on the running back side hurts a lot. Jaden Blue never proved himself as an every down running back. Awesome in the pass game. Showed that against Ohio State. Showed that against a lot of different teams. If you could get him in one-on-one, he was going to make you miss, no matter what, especially when he had a little bit of space and could go one-on-one with a cornerback or a safety. Like, he's going to make you miss. But asking him to run between the tackles really just wasn't his thing unless the offensive line created a nice big hole for him to run through. And he excelled. Um, I would have loved to see Jaden Blue come back just as that Ben, like you said, that third down back that we can get the ball in the back out of the backfield too, and see what kind of magic he can make. Make touchdown, make a touchdown from a screen pass in the backfield look pretty easy. But yeah, he's going to the NFL. He always kind of struck me as a guy that was more focused on his own personal future than a team guy. He said it at the beginning of the season. This is my contract year, and meant it. He was focused on that, and he's living it out. So he's going to go to the draft, and best of luck to him. It was fun. He made some splash plays, against Texas Tech. That one 75-yard run against Texas Tech, kind of put him on the map. But good for him. Hope he can go make some money.
Ditto.
Ditto, you provincial putz. Yeah, I think I don't know the biggest loss to me, and maybe we got some future pods we'll go into, but we are depleted at defensive tackle.
Yeah.
We've had 3 good years of 2 good guys in there. This year felt we had good guys, but they're definitely more of a rotation. Goal line package, bring in Big 15. And, he made some great plays in the goal line this year. I think most notably against A&M on one of their goal line stands, just pushing that pile back. So we got to get some big, athletic, strong guys in there for next year. Right. But yeah, definitely some key departures, guys entering the portal that maybe, some of it is unexpected. Amari Nyblack, a little unexpected. Like we said, we've had each year at tight end, we've had, the last 2 years had a new guy step up and become a playmaker, and, first, second round draft pick because of it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought Sanders was a second round pick, maybe later.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
second or third.
Anyway, top first 2 days if you're drafted. And we talk about the era again. Last year was the beginning of it. You saw a number of Texas Longhorns in the draft. Probably more in the draft last year than the last 5 years before it combined. So this year, similar expectations. Banks is projected the first overall pick or the first tackle taken. Quinn will probably go late first, maybe second. Maybe pro days and stuff. He can jump up. So we can speculate on that. We could spend an hour probably talking about that. But anything else you guys want to?
I want to cover Kelvin Banks one point because I don't feel like we've given him enough of an ode here. Kelvin Banks came in as a true freshman, and in his second start as a true freshman, played against one of the meanest defensive lines in the country against Alabama. Right, Will Anderson was on that defensive line, and he sat there and he stood up and he protected Quinn for a whole quarter until Quinn was hurt, but then played the rest of the game very well as well too, and literally started his career just like he ended it. He was an absolute stalwart at the position, the best left tackle that we've had maybe ever, and with just a remarkable career. He was one of those guys that came in as a true freshman and started those first couple games, and you're like, okay, don't get used to seeing him past 3 years because he's going to be a first-round draft pick. He's that good. He was immediately the best offensive lineman that we had that year as a true freshman too. So him protecting Quinn's blind side for the past 3 years, we're going to miss him tremendously. I know we've got some talent coming up in the offensive tackle and offensive line ranks in general, but him just to come in as that true freshman with all the pressure in the world, playing the hardest position on the offensive line and maintaining that status as a stud for these past 3 years. That was absolutely critical to the success of Texas. Really going to miss him. Really going to miss him. Hopefully some of that good juju, some of that talent rubbed off on some of these younger guys that are coming in because he's going to be missed significantly.
Agreed. Yeah, it's nice to have a big human like that protecting the blind side, and obviously we'll get into it next podcast more than likely. But 4 out of 5 offensive linemen are on their way out, so
Yep.
big shoes to fill. But Kevin Banks led that way, especially winning the Outland Trophy. All in all, guys, I've really enjoyed the season. I love talking about all these players in this team, and for the first year, the 41st Acre, for us to go through this, like, man, what a fun time to be a Texas fan. So I'm looking forward to doing it again in the future. We got plenty more coming up here in the off season. Texas football never dies, right? But to this team, again, I say one more time, to the guys leaving, whether you're transferring, screw you, no. To the guys who are out of eligibility or choosing to leave early, go get that money. That's what playing college ball is about. It's about playing for your school and school pride and all that, but the end goal is still to get to the NFL. And if these guys are good enough to come to UT and leave early because of what they put on the field and go do it, man, thank you all for giving us the time that you gave here. Could not be happier to watch some of these guys move on to the next level.
Yeah.
All right, still to come, we're going to have a recap of the 2024 season, kind of go through some of our predictions, highlights, outcomes. We'll have a 2025 preview at some point once we figure out, all the, transfer portals. We got a long time before spring game and in August. So there's a lot of time for things to change and shift around. So we'll see what the offensive line looks like, the defensive line looks like, wide receiver room, running back room, who jumps who's healthy. So a lot of fun, intriguing things to get into. We know quarterback's settled. That's pretty much the only thing we know at this point in time.
True.
So, but it's been fun, guys. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Welcome, Horns.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks, 2024 team.